Podcast City Network. Welcome to the home of the six-time Super Bowl champion New England Patriots, the Nest Podcast. This is episode 157. I'm your boy Brandon, joined as always by my co-host Zach. Zach, I like the shirt.
Hey, thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we are officially, as of now, a New England Patriots podcast. It's a good thing that you ended up a Pats fan and not a Saints fan, because there seems like there is a lot of issues going on down there in New Orleans. Have you heard about the drama surrounding Michael Thomas?
I have not.
So it appears, of course, we all know that Michael Thomas is going to be out for the first half of the season because of a surgery that he has to have or already has had. And he isn't going to be available for New Orleans, and that's kind of created a rift. Earlier, he tweeted out that a little caption that said, "They tried to damage your reputation. You saved theirs by not telling your side of the story," which it's kind of cryptic, but if you can read between the lines a little bit, it's pretty evident that he isn't so happy with the brass there in New Orleans. It seems like they urged him to play last season whenever they knew he was injured and needed a surgery, most likely to carry Drew Brees across the finish line in his storied career. Hey, Mike, just go out there, help us put it all on the field for Drew, help us do everything we can. And then here in the offseason, he needed the surgery. They tried to get him to prolong it. Finally, he was like, look, enough's enough. I need this surgery. And now he's going to miss a good half a season instead of getting the surgery last season when he was hurt and getting it out of the way so that he could have a full season. Now he's going to come back around week 8 or 9 with a new quarterback, a new offensive system, and it's kind of looking like he's not going to be the Michael Thomas that we all have once known. So this could bode very badly for his future going forward. It seems like he's at the early stages of wanting to get out of New Orleans. You know how it all goes whenever these guys get upset. They want to dispute their contracts and eventually get out and go to greener pastures. So it's a good thing that you're a Pats fan and you don't have to deal with that drama.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot. And for them to have a rough relationship with their best wide receiver coming into a season with a new quarterback, I mean, I'm sure we're going to see multiple guys at the quarterback position for the Saints throughout this year. That's not good. And like you said, he's going to be out for a while, so he won't even be there. That's not good news for this team. I think that means that Alvin Kamara is just going to get that many more touches, that many more throws thrown his way. Hopefully he can sustain that, and hopefully he doesn't get injured, or hopefully the defenses don't really figure that out and just kind of shut them down, because without Drew Brees, I mean, they were kind of rough anyway. But man, when you now lose Michael Thomas, that's a big deal. They've got some strides to make up.
Yeah, that's a big hole to fill, like you said. And it makes me wonder, we talk about fantasy sports on our show Champ to Champ, and I'm wondering what kind of fantasy implications this will have. You alluded to with Thomas being out that Kamara may get more reps. He may get more touches in the offense. But wouldn't you think that defenses are going to also clue in on that?
Oh, yeah.
Stack 8 in the box to try to limit the rushing attack. They're going to have to try to get creative. I think the real winner of this is anybody else that's plugged in as wide receiver, because Kamara is going to be drawing double and triple teams from these defenses.
Absolutely. This is the chance for any of those Michael Thomas wide receivers on that team to really step up and shine, and they could be the next stud of this team. It all kind of depends on if the quarterback can get the ball to that player, though. I think that's
Right.
where the question is. I mean, obviously, we've seen Taysom Hill. He's not really a quarterback. I mean, maybe he's practiced. Maybe he's gotten a little bit better. I just don't see him in that role. And then you got Jameis Winston, who, I mean, for what it's worth, he threw a lot of touchdowns and also a lot of interceptions. He's now had a chance to sit back and learn from Drew Brees. He also did get LASIK surgery on his eyes. Hopefully he can see a little bit better and maybe won't throw some interceptions. But it's all just up in the air. I mean, it's all just a huge question mark at this point.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said earlier, it's a good thing that you decided that, or the wheel decided at least, that you're going to be a New England Patriots fan and you don't have to deal with all that added drama.
Yes, sir.
Dusty's asking us where we value Gibson. I'm guessing that's Antonio Gibson from the Washington football team. If so, as a running back, I'm not quite sure if he cracks my top 10 as far as running backs are concerned, but he's definitely within the top 15 in the league. Definitely, the better half of the running backs out there. Dusty also asked, is Washington's defense a top 3 defense in fantasy leagues? I think so for that one. I do think that Washington's defense is in the top 3.
Yeah.
But we're going to get into running backs on Champ to Champ Saturday night at 9:00. So be sure you tune into that one. Okay, Dusty? Thanks for the comments. Keep them coming. So, Zach, this past weekend, of course, was Hall of Fame weekend. We got our first taste of NFL action with the Steelers and the Cowboys in the Hall of Fame game. Did you catch any of that game, or were you just kind of like, it's an afterthought anyway? It's the preseason to the preseason.
I did catch some of it. I didn't watch a whole lot of it. I tuned in right before Dak gave his little interview or whatever on Zoom.
Okay.
And I mean, it was rather lackluster. I mean, obviously you're not expecting the starters or anyone notary to come out. And I mean, that's what it was. It was just a showcase of guys trying to make the practice squad. So not a whole lot to watch.
Yeah, I mean, you're right there. The key things that I really picked up on was Mason Rudolph is not the number 2 in Pittsburgh. He does not belong on the football field. I'm surprised he's still even rostered. Dwayne Haskins, in my opinion, is the better option for going forward for the Steelers. If Big Ben gets hurt or decides to retire, I think Haskins is the next guy up for that team. Najee Harris, he didn't play long, but he did play for a few snaps. And whenever he was in there with Haskins, they moved the ball pretty well together. But when it was with Rudolph, like there was a screen pass early in the game when Rudolph was in, and he tried to lead him, but he led him too far. And Harris had to bend down and make a shoestring catch. And he's lucky he didn't get his head taken off. And that's what you don't want to see, is a future star, a future stud running back in the NFL getting hurt in the Hall of Fame game because of a quarterback that can't throw a simple 5-yard pass.
Right.
That's bad. That's a bad look. But that was my major takeaway from that Steelers and Cowboys game, is that Dwayne Haskins is the next man up for the Steelers.
Yeah, I am shocked to hear that. Obviously, he was cut by the Washington football team, and maybe this was a wake-up call for him. Maybe he didn't really take his position in Washington seriously. If you remember, he had a huge smirk on his face whenever he dropped in the draft and was picked up by Washington. So maybe he's like, you know what? I'm not as, whatever as I thought I was, and I have a shot here on the Steelers. It's a good team. And maybe he'll be able to make something of it. I can't imagine Big Ben is going to stick around for a lot longer. I kind of want to say that this might be his last year, kind of like Drew Brees. He's probably not going to talk about it a lot. So yeah, I mean, if he can learn as much as you possibly can from a guy like Big Ben, he's going to be able to do more things than Big Ben could, simply because he can run on his feet probably a little bit better. And I think if he takes this year and learns and maybe he gets some reps in there, he could have a shot.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's the smart move right now, is to go ahead and make him the heir apparent. But of course, the Hall of Fame game is just the precursor to what the weekend is really all about, and that is the Hall of Fame induction ceremony and welcoming all of these legends of the game into Canton, Ohio, into the National Football League Hall of Fame. And for what it's worth, I think the NFL does it right with the Hall of Fame. Major League Baseball has a lot to learn when it
Yeah.
comes to their Hall of Fame, but the NFL, they do it right. And the only thing that I didn't really like about all of this, and it is what it is, they have to have some sort of parameters and some sort of limitations, but trying to have these guys, these legends of the game, sum up their entire careers into a 6-minute speech seems nearly impossible. But for what it's worth, these guys went out there and they did the best that they could to try to stay within that. I think Peyton Manning came out and said, like, I'm going to stick to 6 minutes. He had a few moments in his speech where he could have gotten a pop from the crowd, gotten a few laughs or whatever, but he tried to just push right through instead of letting the crowd really enjoy that moment.
Mhm.
One of those was whenever he was introducing Tom Brady, of course, to a chorus of boos from all the fans there in attendance. And then he was like, and when Tom Brady is up here 5 years after his retirement in the year 2035, then, and that was a moment when people could have laughed and cut up, but he just kept on rolling. But he did have some pretty interesting things to say. And Zach, we have a clip of Manning's. It's like a minute or so out of Manning's speech that I wanted to play on the show here, so that we could talk about it and discuss, because it did make me think something real specific. But we'll get to that after the clip. So if you want to go ahead and roll that.
Yep.
Now, when we leave this stage tonight, it is no longer about us. It is about cultivating the game that has given so much to us. It's about nurturing football to live and thrive another day, another year, decade, and another generation. It's about guaranteeing that kids everywhere can learn, bond, grow, and have fun with every flag pulled, every tackle made, every pass thrown, every run, block, sack, and touchdown scored. The audience here tonight is made up of diehard fans who feel football deep in your bones. Now, we may have ignited the fire, but you have fanned the flames. Inevitably, those flames will be whipped by the winds of change, but they don't need to smolder. The future of this game is ours to shape. We just need to take tomorrow on our shoulders as readily as we donned our pads before each game. Let this moment become a cherished memory. And then remember, a legacy is only worthwhile when there is a future to fuel. God bless you, and God bless football.
All right. So I know you didn't really see anything too smoldering in that speech that would warrant a hot take, but did Peyton Manning just campaign to be the next commissioner of the National Football League?
That's an interesting point. I think he could do it. I don't know like what that entails, like how to get that job. I know all the owners vote on a commissioner.
He's talking about protecting the future of the game, growing the future of the game, reaching out, giving the kids who are coming up now the opportunity to play the game. That's very commissioner-like speech there from Mr. Manning. And if anybody's going to be able to come into the role of commissioner after Goodell, why not somebody who has played the game, who has a good relationship with the NFL Players Association, who has a good relationship with the owners of the league? Because, I mean, let's face it, Peyton Manning is well liked and well loved by everybody in the football world. Could we see the sheriff as the commish come 2022?
I'd be a stretch for me. I'd love to see it, honestly. I think you're hitting it right on the nail by having a former player be brought into the mix of the higher echelon of leadership. And we saw MLB do that by bringing in Ken Griffey Jr. to assist Manfred, or whatever that title is going to be. I think maybe something like that would be more along the lines of reality. But I don't know. I mean, I could see him also kind of going off and doing something a little bit more local. I don't know where he resides these days. Um, I don't know. I think that guy could do just about anything he wants to and be pretty successful at it. He's got a sharp mind, obviously, and he's pretty, intelligent. I mean, he's got an interesting viewpoint on everything, and obviously he played football forever, so he could definitely do some good if he were to actually be brought into that commissioner circle or whatever they want to call that, and advise him on what to do with the game.
I say Peyton Manning for commissioner. Make it happen. Print the posters. I'll wear the button. Let's make this thing happen. Presidential style campaign. Peyton Manning up in debates against Roger Goodell for commissioner. Let's make it happen. Fan vote. Everybody gets their opinions heard. But if that's the case, then he used his 6 minutes to try to build the future instead of looking at the past. Whereas a lot of guys, they focus on their careers, where they came from and stuff like that. We did get to see the enshrinement of guys like Calvin Johnson, who spoke about how he injured his back his first season and thought that his career was going to be over, and had to basically limp through the next year trying to get his back right. And then finally he found a substance, marijuana, that was able to help him ease a lot of those aches that he had from playing football, and was able to go on and have this Hall of Fame career. And then we had guys like Charles Woodson, who went out there and he was praising his mom and singing her a song and thanking her for her influence, being a single parent, raising him to be a good man. We just saw a lot of really good speeches. Edgerrin James came out there and declared himself as inmate 336 because he was the 336th inductee into the Hall of Fame. Thought that was kind of funny. But one other guy really stood out to me, and it's a guy that built his Hall of Fame resume there in St. Louis, where you're at, and that's Isaac Bruce. What are the locals saying about Bruce going into the Hall of Fame before I get into my rant about him?
I haven't heard a whole lot. I didn't catch much radio today. I usually kind of listen to a few sports talk radio shows. I haven't heard much about it. I don't know the name personally. Obviously, I wasn't a Rams fan or anything. So, yeah, I couldn't say at this moment.
Well, Isaac Bruce was a Ram. He was a member of the Greatest Show on Turf back when Kurt Warner and all those guys were throwing the ball every which way. And he went out there, and in his speech, he took the time to say, "To the nameless voice that called me 2 weeks before the draft in 1994 to let me know that the NFL wasn't interested, how do you like me now?" Then, I heard another story about whenever David Baker, the president of the NFL Hall of Fame, came to knock on his door, because David Baker, he personally likes to inform these guys, hey, you're going to be a Hall of Famer. He likes to go to their houses, go to wherever they are working on set. I know he did that with Bill Cowher and Jimmy Johnson. He came on TV, surprised them on pregame shows before the games last season to say, hey, you're going to be a Hall of Famer, coach. Congratulations. Get their honest reaction, on camera and with a surprise. But he went to Isaac Bruce's house, knocked on the door, no answer. Knocked on the door again, no answer. He called, confirmed somebody was there, knocked on the door again, and finally Isaac Bruce answered the door and was like, now you know how it feels to wait on your call. To me, that's kind of petty. Like, everything about Bruce has been kind of petty going into the Hall of Fame. And this is a guy who's a reverend. He's supposed to be like a good person or whatever. And, one of the fruits of the Holy Spirit is patience. And he's not exhibiting that patience at all, being that like he's acting like he should have already been there. And I don't know. I just got a real weird vibe from that, and, felt like he was just being overly petty. But maybe that's just me, and maybe I'll just shut up about it. But
no, I definitely see where you're coming from, especially on that second one, making the guy who's going to tell you you're a Hall of Famer wait. I mean, maybe he tried to make that a viral moment or whatever, but that's kind of ridiculous. I can see where he's coming from on the first comment. It's always good to at least it feels good to kind of prove those people that doubted you wrong. But even then, I mean, at your Hall of Fame speech, I guess that's something to say, but you should be well moved on by this point. I don't know. I mean, I guess everybody's different, but that's a strange way to capitalize on your moment. You know, you're going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and
Yeah.
I don't know. That is strange.
Yeah, it's almost like you're making that moment about the other person. And
Right.
it's odd. But as I said to kick off the show, this is the home of the 6-time world champion New England Patriots. So we do need to talk a little bit about what's going on in Patriots camp. And we've had some good news coming out of it. Of course, this past week we had the brilliant zinger from Bill Belichick where he said, "Hey, if it rains, it rains. If it's hot, it's hot. It is what it is. We're still going to go out there and do our thing." That dude, he with his monotone voice and his ever serious approach to all things football, he has some great one-liners for some of these questions that the reporters ask him. They're asking him like, "Hey, what are you going to do during your training camp if it rains?" "Man, if it rains, it rains. I don't care about that. Like, why are you asking me a dumb question?"
Yeah.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love Coach Bill Belichick, and I love the fact that he is so laser focused in on this season right now that he doesn't care what the weather's like. All he cares about is the on-field product. And, for what it's worth, it looks like the team has started to really come together. N'Keal Harry made waves in the offseason whenever he asked to be traded and all this stuff. Lo and behold, he's still there in New England, and he's having probably the best camp of any other New England Patriot player, looking like a wide receiver one out there, like the guy that he was drafted to be. The word coming out of Pat's camp is that Harry has had arguably the best camp out of everyone. And, it looks like something that Bill may be trying to leverage that animosity into having one of the best seasons of his career. Or do you think he's going to use the great work that he's done this offseason into a bigger trade value?
I say if I'm Bill Belichick, I can go either way with it. Obviously you want him to be the best player that he can be, and that's either to play for you and to help you win games, or as a good piece of trade bait. I mean, if he really wants out and he's playing exceptionally well, you're going to get a lot back for him in return. And then on the other hand, if he decides, you know what, I actually do like it here, I was in a bad spot, whatever, then he can stick around for you and be a wide receiver one. And I think him and Cam have a little bit of a rapport going on, and that will only help things. I mean, if Cam has a guy he can rely on, I think that'll take a lot of pressure off of him. And to that point, if N'Keal Harry can be open and catch those big plays, it's just better for the whole team.
Yeah, you mentioned Cam in your response there. Does that mean that you view Cam as the starter going forward, or do you think Mac is actually making this into a competition?
No, I think the ball is Cam's for at least the first 3 or 4 weeks, if not longer. It really kind of depends on Cam's success. As they always say, you want to let the new guy learn, but at a certain point, you got to kind of shove him out there and see what he can do, especially if you're losing games. I mean, I don't think they're just going to lay down and lose this season like they did last year. Not that they laid down last year, but I think, like you said, Bill Belichick is laser focused. He wants to win again. He didn't like last year. So if Cam struggles severely, you might see Mac Jones in there in week 4, week 5, something like that. But if Cam is solid, at least in my opinion, I would let Mac Jones learn a little bit more, learn the playbook, because it's a huge step up. We see it time and time again. Those quarterbacks that get drafted, they just fall completely off. I mean, a lot of guys don't even become mediocre quarterbacks that were great quarterbacks in college. So the more that he can learn, the more time that he can just kind of practice and get used to this level of football, the better. I would hate to see him trotted out there way too early and then have to struggle. So
No, I agree 100%. I think you're spot on that it should be Cam to start the season. It should be his ball until he proves that he's not fit for it. Let Matt continue to learn. Let him learn how to be a professional. We all know about the quarterbacks from Alabama and their track record in the NFL, and it's not always the best. So I definitely want him to learn how to be an NFL quarterback, and Cam's a former MVP of the league. He's a guy that's been there. He's led a team to a Super Bowl in the past. Of course, they didn't win that Super Bowl. They faced the New England Patriots at that time, and he lost, but it is what it is. Cam's made it to a Super Bowl. He's won an MVP. He's been a professional for almost a decade now. He knows what it's like. He knows how to jump through the media circus. He knows how to handle himself accordingly. Mac is going to be able to absorb all of these things and learn these things without having the pressure of going out there and winning games. Look at guys like Aaron Rodgers. He had Brett Favre as a teacher for 2 years before he ever became a starter. Imagine how much better Andrew Luck would have been if he had Peyton Manning to learn from for at least a year. Instead, he was kind of thrown out there to the wolves, and he was great. Don't get me wrong. He did well for himself, but imagine how much better he could have been. And you got a lot of guys like that around the league. So I think you're right. I think it will be Cam taking the ball for week 1 and going forward. We'll see if Mac ever gets his time to shine. Of course, if there's a blowout game or something like that where the Pats are up by 4 touchdowns late in the game, we're going to see Mac go out there and take some snaps, but they're not going to be high pressure snaps. They're not going to be with the game on the line. But if he continues to ball out, he's going to be the guy going forward in the future. And that's what we want as Pats fans, is we want him to be the guy next year.
yeah, 100%.
That being said, big free agent in the offseason, tight end Hunter Henry suffered a shoulder injury in practice on Sunday. He was scheduled to have an MRI today. I haven't heard word of anything yet, but all the reports seem to suggest that it wasn't anything serious. However, he is missing time. That's the most serious thing. He's missing out on training camp. He'll likely miss a lot of preseason because of this injury as well, because why would you put him out there if he's a little dinged up? Let him heal up and all that stuff. However, he's missing out on all of the reps with Cam Newton, with Mac Jones. How is that going to hurt him going into the season, and how is that going to hurt the Patriots offense going into the season?
It's definitely going to put a little hole there because, I mean, that tight end spot is pretty important this year. I mean, you saw that with what they did in the offseason. Bill Belichick just went after those types of players. And that's kind of what it seems like they're going to build their offense around. You know, Cam is obviously going to be able to run, and if he can scramble and make a play to one of these guys that's open in the middle, that seems like what they're going to try to do. And if obviously one of these pieces isn't there, it's going to be rough. Hopefully he'll be back by the time the actual season starts. And then at the same time, hopefully he's not too rusty by that point. Cause like I said, he's going to be missing some time, some practice. He's going to be behind everybody. So we'll just have to see how severe it is. You know, hopefully it's something where he can kind of work out a little bit, maybe not, take snaps or, be on the actual practice field, but hopefully he can do something and still kind of stay active.
That's what worries me, is that he'll just be a little too rusty to really make an impact. And, with the 2 tight end set that the Patriots are going to be running this year, he's going to be doing a lot of blocking. He's going to be running. The Patriots are going to be running the ball a lot. You've heard me talk about it for years now, that they're built to run the football, with Cam Newton being the likely starter and that run game that they have. The 2 tight end set is going to help out that run game a lot. So Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, they'll both be able to go out and catch balls from time to time, but they're buying in to be run blockers as well. And with a sore shoulder, it makes me wonder how effective he'll be in the blocking game more than anything.
Sure.
But time will tell, and Bill is going to get the most out of him and going to get the best version of Hunter Henry that he possibly can. Boy, does the UFC love their interim champions. We saw it again this past Saturday night in the main event of UFC pay-per-view between Cyril Gane and the Black Beast, Derek Lewis. And Gane got the finish in round 3 and was crowned the interim heavyweight champion and sets up a future fight between his former teammate and UFC champ Francis Ngannou. What do you think about interim champions, and especially this interim championship, considering Ngannou just won the UFC heavyweight title 3 months ago?
This one makes zero sense. Francis was the undisputed champ. I mean, it's not like he suffered some sort of injury that would have put him out for a year plus. Nothing like that. It makes no sense. And the only thing I can think of is that I think they want to set John Jones up to fight somebody big, but I don't think they want to give him a title shot right off the bat. So maybe they're going to do Francis and John, and then the winner of that goes for the championship belt. But I mean, I don't get that I don't get that either, because John could fight anybody and it's a big fight. This is John Jones going up a weight class. This is interesting. People are already interested in this. You don't have to match him up against one of the big time contenders in the heavyweight division. We're already in. We want to see this. I do not understand this move. The interim belt is just so dumb to me, unless there's an actual reason for it. This one is one of the most questionable ones they've ever done.
Yeah. Oh, you mentioned John Jones. The dream match that they were trying to put together was Ngannou and Jones for the heavyweight championship, but the UFC failed to come to terms with both fighters financially. John Jones wants to get paid $1 bajillion, and Ngannou as champion was like, well, if he's getting paid that much, I want to get paid that much. And the UFC is like, no, we're not paying you guys that much. So there was that sticking point. The UFC has also since come out and said that John Jones is not going to fight for the remainder of 2021. So the earliest that we could see him is 2022. And is the sun beginning to set on his UFC heavyweight career before it even really gets going? I think so. I think he's just trying to get the biggest payday that he can and then ride off into that sunset. But you did mention that, it's kind of weird that they threw the interim out there already. It's not like Ngannou's been sitting around ducking fights or anything like that. He's only been champion for about 3 months, which is about 90 days. We'll give it 100 if you're being, on that side of things. But it was 225 days from when Stipe beat DC until he defended against Francis Ngannou. So he set out for a lot longer without defending his title, and they didn't declare an interim in that amount of time. So it makes me think that there definitely is something going on behind the scenes contractually with Ngannou. Maybe he's pulling the same thing that John Jones is and demanding more money. Maybe he's just trying to slow his roll and not take as many fights on or whatever. Whatever the case is now they've got it set up for Ngannou and Gane to have their unification fight, but Gane just fought in August, so the earliest that he would be able to fight is maybe November timeframe. So we're looking at Ngannou not fighting until then and not unifying those titles. If he does have a fight with John between now and then that's going to push the unification out even further. So you're going to continue to have one guy with a fake belt, one guy with the real belt. It just makes no sense. I think the only reason that they put an interim title on the line was because they were fighting in Houston, Texas, which is Derek Lewis's hometown. That's the only thing that I've been able to piece together that makes even a microcosm of sense, because they wanted to let him try to win the championship in his home city, which it didn't even work out that way. They were just trying to sell more tickets, sell more pay-per-view buys or whatever. And it just puts the sport in a terrible spot.
Yeah, I definitely think there's something to that. I think this was a small UFC. Like this didn't bring in the casuals like it always does whenever there's a big name fighter on the card. And this was maybe their way of spicing it up a little bit and say, hey, we're going to have a championship fight, even though we all actual UFC fans know that this is a BS belt that they just make up whenever they want to. Weird. The UFC is such a strange organization these days. I mean, they're trying to appeal to an audience that I don't even understand like what they're trying to get from this audience. People like the sport. This isn't 2004. People know about the UFC. People roughly understand, what the sport is. You don't have to make people tune in. People are gonna tune in. I mean, this is a pretty big sport, all things considered at this point. They have a lot of stars. They have a lot of stars in the making. There's a bunch of other stuff you could have done to try to sell this fight. Make your cards better. I mean, you're not forced to put so-and-so on the undercard. You can make them stacked. I don't understand it at all. And I think, like you said, having the interim belt BS really waters down everything. I mean, it makes the championship fights kind of weird. Like, two champions are going for the one belt, but they both have a belt. I don't get it at all. It's so dumb. And I wish they would just get rid of it. Like, if you're going to strip Francis for whatever reason, then just do that. If that's what you want to do, you want to take his belt away from him for no reason, then do it. Don't come up with some stupid interim belt for however long until they fight. I don't get it at all. And it's so dumb.
Now, I get it on situations where if like a guy's legit hurt and is going to be out for an extended amount of time, make an interim champ so you can keep the division going while that guy is out. When he comes back, he's able to get that first crack at unification. Got it. Maybe in like somebody like TJ Dillashaw's case, whenever he was suspended, and strip guys like that of a belt if they break rules or whatever, and let them, once their suspension is up, throw them back in the mix so that they can be one of the next in line for a title shot. Got it. But just making up a belt just because, that it's bad. But the UFC, for what it's worth, they have a Hall of Fame. They could make an interim Hall of Fame and have some pretty big name stars in there, because they've given interim championship belts to a lot of big name guys. Guys like John Jones have been interim champions. Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, Andre Arlovsky has held the interim heavyweight championship belt. Nogueira, Frank Mir, now Cyril Gane, just to name a few, have been interim UFC champions at some point in their career. Not all of them went on to unify. Some of them went on and lost, like Gaethje. Gaethje just recently lost to Khabib whenever he tried to unify it. He famously threw the belt on the ground and is like, no, I'm waiting for the real one, because he thinks the same thing that we do, that interim titles are basically toys. It means less to them than this one means to me.
Right. Yep. That's for sure.
Because this one's a legit championship. Those are just toys.
Yep. There are no interim championships in our fantasy league.
That's right. Only one champ, and the champ is here, baby. It drives me crazy with all this the interim stuff, and I don't get it. But that's UFC. Like you said, they've got a brand, they've got a sport that people know and love, but for whatever reason, they try to water it down. They try to sugarcoat it. They try to make it difficult for fans to even watch it. Like, you have to have that subscription to ESPN plus you have to go out there and watch on their apps and all that stuff. And Dana White's trying to crack down on anybody even using any of their content. I remember we used an audio clip from a UFC interview one time, and our episode got kicked off of YouTube and kicked off of Facebook Live within seconds of even playing it. It's just ridiculous how strict they are. Like, you would think that they would want people to be out there sharing their content, growing their sport, growing their brand, but they're so stingy with it. It makes no sense. I think they're managing themselves into like a little corner, and then eventually it'll just implode on themselves.
Yeah. I think Dana doesn't really know what he's doing. I mean, if you think about it for a second, when he got into this, he was a boxing promoter.
Yeah.
And he met the Fertittas, and they said, hey, we've got an insane amount of money that we don't know what to do with. Why don't we make a cage fighting organization, and you can run it for us? And he said, oh, hell yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, that sounds okay.
Years go by and years go by.
I was just going to jerk off today, but that sounds a lot better.
Right. Years go on, and it actually becomes a thing. And now you've got this guy who just by sheer luck. I don't know how he got the job in the first place, but he ends up finding himself as basically a commissioner of one of the top sporting leagues in the whole world. I mean, when it comes to mixed martial arts and fighting, what's bigger than UFC? And some people might say that certain boxing organizations are bigger, but for my money, I'm more interested and entertained by UFC fights than I am boxing fights. So you've got this guy who is probably just kind of winging it with all this stuff, and they've got this ridiculous ESPN deal, and they've got to make certain things happen for that deal. I don't know. I think you're right. I think they might be managing themselves into the ground, and Dana's probably too stubborn to go out there and try to hire somebody who knows what the hell they're doing or whatever. And they're leaving the door open for a competitor to come in and make a better product. I don't know who could do that. I mean, the rest of the guys are fairly small at the moment. Obviously, all the big names are at the UFC for the most part. So it's a weird position. And I've said this before, and the ESPN deal I thought was going to be the best thing to ever happen to UFC. They were going to put out amazing cards for free because they could put them on ESPN, the biggest sports channel in TV history. What do? They put everything behind a paywall. They put out crap free cards like they always have, and it's just more of the same. But now you have to pay some subscription to even buy the pay-per-view. You can't even just buy a pay-per-view. It makes no sense. They're completely going against what they've been doing for the last 15 years plus in growing the sport. Now they've grown to a great spot, and they're closing it all off, and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, this is the same argument that we've been saying since they announced the ESPN Plus deal, like how lopsided it is and how hard it is to be a fan anymore. You mentioned someone could come along and ultimately dethrone them or whatnot, or who could come along. What do you think about this? The U.S. Olympic team dominated the rest of the world in wrestling. The U.S. won in Taekwondo. They had a good showing in judo. Let's not really talk about the boxing team because they didn't fare too well. But do you think we could ever see MMA in the Olympics?
I absolutely do. I think that would be a very entertaining Olympic sport. You've got a lot of UFC fighters from all over the world. I'm sure they would love to go and represent their countries in their weight divisions. And then you'd get to see, the best from Bellator, the best from ONE FC go against the best from UFC. That would be an amazing thing to have happen. And I think they could really capitalize on that. That's something that people would definitely tune in for. So I would love to see that.
Now, I don't think they could really get away with doing it like the old Pride style to where you would have like 3 fights in a night or whatever, especially if you get busted up in one of them or something like that. So maybe make it like a true team event and have it to where it's like, okay, you're the American team, you're the Dagestani team, you're the Irish team or whatever. And based off of who wins fights, your team scores points. The team with the most points at the win, that's the country that gets the gold medal. Everyone on that team would get the gold medal at that point, even if like one of the fighters happened to lose a fight or whatever, he was still on the gold medal team. I think that's the way to do it, and I think that would be electric for the Olympics.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you do have a good point there. Obviously, the Olympics are only 2 weeks long, so
you don't have a lot of recovery time.
Yeah, you can't fight one fight and then you're fighting for gold, in a couple of days or whatever. So they would have to kind of mess with that aspect of it, but I think there's something there, and I think you're right. I think people would really love that. People would love to see, obviously Team America would have a lot of people, but I mean, Team Nigeria would have a bunch of people on it. Like you said, Dagestan, if they want to either do Russia or if they want to do their own thing or whatever, they have a gang of killers. Brazil obviously would have amazing fighters. I'd love to see it.
Imagine like a Team Russia coached by Habib.
Yeah.
Whew.
Good luck to anybody facing that team.
Killers.
Yeah.
A team Ireland with Conor McGregor as the cornerstone of that team. You've got, obviously the Team America would be stacked with some talent. Of course, it might end up being like other Olympic sports where the best talent doesn't really want to go and do that. So you get to learn the names of some of these up and coming fighters. And then whenever they are fighting in the UFC, you got Bruce Buffer announcing them as an Olympic gold medalist. That's pretty cool. I think that's something they should definitely look into. And if I'm on the Olympic committee, I'm signing that up immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. That reminds me of whenever Kurt Angle went and won a gold medal. I
with
mean,
a broken freaking neck.
Yeah. And then, for his WWE matches, you could say that like this might be fake, which they never say, but you can kind of hear it as a fan, like, yeah, this guy's wrestling in a fake league or whatever, but he's a legitimate gold medal wrestler. Like, he can do the actual stuff too. I think
like
that's
he even wore his gold medals to the ring.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think he wrestled in the 96 Summer Games in Atlanta, Georgia. And you could sometimes see it up close and personal where it would show that logo on the gold medal. So it was his actual gold medals that he was rocking. Dude, that's incredible that he was that good at real wrestling.
Yeah.
And he was a great performer in the WWE as well.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about some MLB. We are now in the second half of the season. The All-Star break has long been gone at this point, and we're in the second half of the season. The Red Sox have been struggling lately. The Cardinals, they've not been that great. So we're both kind of just like, well, crap, what happened to our summers? But for some teams, they're on the upswing. They're in the NL East. The Phillies have replaced the Mets at the top of the heap, and then the Braves leapfrogged them last night to take over the second place spot. So the Mets are now 2.5 games out of first place and third place in the NL East after being so dominant for the majority of the season, making a huge splash at the free agent or at the trade deadline with Javi Baez coming over. It's not really working out for him, though, is it?
Yeah, at least as of late, I definitely think that's probably the tightest race for the winner of a league. But yeah, I mean, Bryce Harper got hot at the right moment. He's been just bomb after bomb,
the ball. Yeah.
Which that's what he gets paid to do. So it's about time he's doing it. But I think this is the perfect time for the Phillies to strike. Like you said, the Mets just haven't been able to put it together for whatever reason. The Braves are just now kind of finding out who they are and able to string together some wins. I know they beat up on us, but I mean, if the Phillies can stay like this, they definitely have a shot at winning that division. And that's basically the only way that any of those NL East teams are going to get into the playoffs. That's a must win the division scenario for all three of those teams.
Yep, you're absolutely right, because and same for the NL Central for that matter, because the three teams from the NL West are going to make it to the playoffs, and that's the Giants, the Dodgers, and the Padres. But we'll get to them in a minute. The Brewers are still holding out the lead in the NL Central. They're 5 games up on the Cincinnati Reds, which is a huge surprise team for me this year. Nick Castellanos was hot early. Joey Votto's had a second prime career going this season. He's been hot. Pitching has been good. They're 10 games over 500 right now. They're balling. And it's good to see. It's good to see that division spiced up a little bit. Of course, your Cardinals are 10.5 games back right now, so it's not looking too good for them. They're hovering right around the 500 mark. And, we had high hopes whenever Arenado was traded there that would be the piece that they needed to really be competitive. But pitching woes have definitely been an issue for the Cards.
Yeah, 100%. I think the Reds are the underrated, the most underrated team of the whole season, at least this far. I never gave them a chance. I thought that they just didn't have what it takes to keep up with good teams in games. Yeah. And they've been pretty damn good. I mean, I think they do have some bullpen issues. They could probably get beat late in games by teams that have a ton of hitters. But I mean, if their big two can keep hitting the ball, they could very well keep up with those big, those big scoring teams. It's hard to say what's going to happen because I think the Brewers have really good pitching across the board. And that's basically what's kept them in games. I mean, if you can keep the score low, your offense doesn't need to do a whole hell of a lot to win. So it's going to be very interesting. And of course, the Cardinals are nowhere near the talks of winning that division, which sucks to see. But I mean, if we do end up not making it to the playoffs this season, I'm not going to be too upset about it. I think a lot of things can happen next year. A lot of players are coming off the books, and hopefully they can make a move. We're going to have some pitchers come back. So it's not all down in the dumps, but yeah, this year was really rough for them. They missed a lot of key positions. Obviously, like you said, pitching was the biggest one, and that crushed them. And they couldn't find anything to fall back on, either from their prospects down in the minors. Obviously, they didn't do a whole hell of a lot other than pick up some old pitchers at the deadline. So it is what it is at this point. Yeah, I think this division is the Brewers to lose, but I think the Reds are going to give them a pretty good competition because, like you said, they've got guys that no one expected to be this good that are doing extremely well.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right that is the Brewers division to lose at this point. The NL West, the surprise team out there, still the San Francisco Giants with the best record in Major League Baseball. Did you think that we would be saying that 2 weeks into the season, much less, 2 months until the end of the season? Probably not. They've been phenomenal this year, and they are holding off the LA Dodgers, who has the most stacked team in all of Major League Baseball. Dodgers are 4 games back right now.
That's so crazy to say. I mean, and we've been saying it all summer. We just can't believe that the Giants are doing this well. And the Dodgers throw money at anything they can to try to win this division because I don't think they know how to cope without winning this division because they've been doing it for so long.
Yeah, it's insane to me that the Dodgers are this far behind at this point in the season, but that's just a testament to how good the San Francisco Giants are and how good they've been playing. And then, of course, the San Diego Padres are still trying to hang on there, but they're 7.5 game back of the division. Their best bet at this point is to get that second wild card spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what they need to focus on now. I think all along that was not a division that they were going to be able to win. They have a great team, but that division is super stacked at the top. So win the games that you can, beat the teams that you should beat, and just continue this stride. Make sure everyone's as healthy as possible. Get ready for a strong September push, and they'll roll right into October with a playoff spot. I'm sure. Like you said, I think it's going to be that second wild card. But there's nothing to scoff at. I mean, you get into the playoffs, you're in the playoffs. It doesn't matter whether you win the division or not.
Yeah. Over in the American League, the White Sox have pretty much all but locked up their division. They're 10.5 games up over the Indians for second place. They're in the AL Central. So they've pretty much got that one in the bag unless they have a catastrophic collapse towards the end of the season, but I don't see that happening. The Astros are 2 games up over the Athletics now, so that's been a pretty juggernaut team there in Houston who's been just consistently getting better as the season has progressed. And the Athletics, they've kind of stalled a little bit. They were hot for a stretch of the season, but they've kind of slowed off. And, of course, the Boston Red Sox in the AL East, they were leading the division and had the best record in baseball up until 12 days ago. And then since then, they've tanked a lot. They're now 4 games out of first place. The Rays have surged ahead, and the Yankees are closing in quickly. The Rays, they could just coast and almost win this division at this point. They could have a collapse. They do play the Red Sox this week, and if the Red Sox could manage a sweep, then they're right back into it. But if they lose any of these games, it's going to be hard to climb back for the rest of the season. And for the people out there that are saying it's Chaim Bloom's fault for not spending all of the money and trading off all the farm pieces to make a splash at the deadline, prior to the deadline, this was a first place team. This was a team that had the best record in baseball. I don't think he made a mistake by not going out and getting all of the big guns. He got Kyle Schwarber, who is still going to be coming back off of injury. Chris Sale is still coming back. He starts his first game against the Orioles this coming Saturday. So it's not dire straits right now. They still have time that they can make a surge. Right now they're in the wild card 1 position, so it's not like it's the end of the world. And I can see the Red Sox still making it to the playoffs. In fact, Fangraphs still has them as the team to win the division. So we'll see what happens in the long run. But man, the Blue Jays have a scary good lineup, and for them to be 7 games back is pretty wild.
Yeah, the AL East has been crazy because 4 teams are basically right there. I mean, the Blue Jays are as good as anybody else, but it just so happens to be that there's 3 other teams that are good. Crazy division. I tend to agree with you about the Red Sox. I mean, sometimes it's not the GM's fault. It's not up to him to buy the team and buy them into being good. Sometimes it's the players that have to play well, and it's the players' fault if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Chaim Bloom is not responsible for Garrett Richards going out there and blowing up the inning and giving up whatever that he does, which I've heard you complain about him a lot. Sometimes it's just one of those things where you either win or you lose. I mean, it's as simple as that sometimes. If I had a first place team going into the trade deadline, why would I blow a bunch of money in prospects on getting a few pieces that may or may not even affect anything? Like you said, you've been waiting for Chris Sale to come back this long. That's really the cornerstone that you're waiting on here. I see no issues with this team. Even if they don't win this division and the Rays do win this division, you're going to get that wild card spot. It's not the end of the world. What matters is getting into the playoffs and playing in October.
Yep. And to your point about the AL East being the toughest division, they are the only division in baseball that has 4 teams with 60-plus wins.
Yeah.
The next closest to that would be the NL West, and they have 3 60-plus game winners. So
four teams that are over 500. I mean, that's a rarity in baseball.
Very much so, and that's why, it's one of the toughest divisions out there, if not the toughest division, because you have to play every team in your division 19 times a year. And if you're always playing against 500 or better teams, it means that you're going to have a tough season ahead. So
right.
The Red Sox are just in a little bit of a funk. They'll snap out of it. They've got 3 games against the Rays. If they win those 3, they're right back in it. They would be 1 game out of first place at that point. And then you got the weekend series against the Orioles. Orioles are 29 games out of first place. They're 38-72. Those are very winnable games against the Orioles. Plus, you've got Chris Sale coming back on the mound. You'll have Kyle Schwarber in the lineup, if not by this weekend, probably into next week sometime. Things will be okay in Boston. Just don't go kill yourselves just yet. It'll be all right.
Are the Orioles going to crack 40 wins?
Yeah, they'll crack 40. They're at 38 right now. They've got a month and a half to get 2 wins. That's doable. Will they crack 50? That's debatable.
Man, I was hoping that I would be able to say that I called the Orioles not winning 40 games before the season started.
They'll win 40. They'll win more than 40. 50, that's a stretch.
I think the Diamondbacks are the team that may not win 40. I mean, they've just been god awful. I mean, obviously we always talk about the Pirates and the Orioles being bad, but this year I think the Diamondbacks have to wear that paper bag because they've been just ridiculously terrible.
They have 35 wins at the moment. I think they'll still crack 40. It's going to be hard not to win 5 games with a month and a half left in the schedule. You luck up and win a game here and there. So
right. Yep.
Clearing the bases. The only thing that I have left is that rumors are circulating around NFL locker rooms and talking heads and conversations that the Eagles are the front runners for trying to land Deshaun Watson. Do you think we see a deal get done before the season starts, or is this something that's just going to be chalked up to rumors?
Jalen Hurts. What's up with him?
That tells me that the Eagles aren't sold on Jalen Hurts as the potential future, or he would be included in this trade to the Texans, and they value him as a potential starter.
That's where I see the angle. I think if you want to make a move for Deshaun Watson, then you're going to package up whoever your number one quarterback is with that, so that Houston has someone that they can play immediately. So if they can make that deal happen, I say that's a great deal for Philadelphia. That'll be very interesting if that happens, because like you said, they drafted Jalen Hurts, and obviously you were high up on him. And to just basically kind of get rid of him before he even gets going is an interesting move. But if you're going for a guy like Deshaun Watson, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's also, interesting to note that the Eagles have as their backup quarterback right now Joe Flacco, who is a former Super Bowl winning quarterback. They recently signed him to a deal. Maybe if they are planning to move on from Jalen Hurts, they feel comfortable plugging in Joe Flacco until Deshaun Watson would be ready to play. Because in all likelihood, Deshaun's going to miss some games this season with his ongoing issues off the field.
Mm-hmm.
So why not have somebody like a Joe Flacco, a veteran who can come in there, throw the ball around for you, maybe win a couple games here and there. I don't think the Eagles are really out there to compete for the division right now anyway. For all intents and purposes, it's going to come down between the Cowboys and the football team as the two front runners for that division. The Eagles are just going to be like, we're building for the future. The Giants, they're just hoping that Saquon Barkley's wheels are going to be okay and they can start, their trend upwards into the future for that organization. But I could see it, if this comes to fruition, then the Eagles would get Deshaun Watson. They would have to give up a pretty hefty ransom, Jalen Hurts and draft picks. But if they're able to get that insurance that we talked about a few weeks ago, to where these first round picks become a second round pick, depending on how much Watson actually gets to play this season, maybe that's a deal that they make. Do they get it done before the season starts? That's the big question. And, if so, how is Jalen Hurts going to respond getting traded during training camp or preseason, and then has to learn a brand new scheme, a brand new playbook on the fly?
Yep, that's going to be extremely rough. And I don't know. I don't know if anyone's going to be able to make this trade by the time the season starts. I think it's going to take a lot of doing, because like you said, teams are going to have to give up a lot for him. And I don't know if they're going to be ready to do that just straight off the start of the season. It's probably going to take a few weeks. If I had to guess, I think it's going to take maybe even 5-6 weeks for them to get a deal, if they even do get a deal done, because I think there's a lot of teams out there that are still afraid that he might get suspended right before the season starts or whatever, because the NFL can basically just say that he's whatever, the conduct thing or whatever they really want to do, and pull the rug right out from under him. So I don't know if we're going to see him traded by the
And
start.
I'm among those people that think that come right before week 1 is when we'll find out that Deshaun is on the commissioner's exempt list and not going to be able to play for weeks 1 through whatever it ends up being. And Tyrod Taylor would then go forward as the starting quarterback of the Houston Texans. Could it be that, if Jalen Hurts does get traded there, he's the backup to Tyrod for a couple of weeks until he learns the playbook a little bit, and then we see him replace Tyrod Taylor, who would once again be replaced as the starting quarterback for a team? Does anybody have worse luck than that guy?
No,
I don't think so either.
I feel so bad for that dude.
No kidding. Like he keeps getting chances taken from him. Oh well, it is what it is. That's the NFL life.
Yes, sir. Not for long.
You got anything else you want to add, partner?
I'm good, man.
I'm good too. We appreciate all of you guys that have watched along on the live stream, all the comments that have been rolling in. We definitely love seeing those. Tune in on Saturday night at 9:00 p.m. Eastern Time to another episode of Champ to Champ. This week, we'll be talking about running backs, everyone's favorite position to grab in the first round of your draft. We'll give you our top 10 to let you know how we're looking at them. Maybe we'll help you decide what you're going to be seeing come those mid-round draft picks in the first round. If you're stuck there in like the 7, 8, 9 hole and all the studs are gone, you don't really want to reach for a wide receiver at that point. We'll get some of those back end top 10 running backs so that you can fill out your fantasy rosters. Tune in again next week on Monday night for another episode of the Nest Podcast, and we will see you guys then. Peace.